Imagine the absolute silence of a global artery snapping shut. It is June 27, 2017. At the sprawling container terminal in Elizabeth, New Jersey, thousands of massive steel shipping containers sit frozen under the sun. Trucks are lined up for miles outside the gates, their drivers angry, confused, and waiting for clearance that will not come. Inside the terminal offices of Maersk, the largest shipping company on the planet, an invisible wave has just crashed through the building. Workers stare in horror as their computer screens flicker, freeze, and then reboot independently. When the monitors flicker back to life, the familiar Windows logo is gone. In its place is a stark, black screen with blood-red text demanding $300 in Bitcoin. In a matter of minutes, the digital nervous system of a corporation that controls 20% of all global shipping has been completely eradicated. Phones are ringing uncontrollably. Printers are spewing pages of ransom demands on their own. Panicked administrators scramble to pull Ethernet cables directly from the walls, desperately trying to sever their machines from the network, but they are already too late.
The screens going black at Maersk were just a single symptom of a global hemorrhage. In those exact same minutes, the same black screen was appearing on the systems of pharmaceutical giant Merck, halting the production of critical vaccines. It was appearing at the FedEx subsidiary TNT Express, paralyzing global logistics. It was shutting down chocolate factories at Mondelez, paralyzing the radiation monitoring systems at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and completely blinding the government infrastructure of Ukraine. This was not a localized glitch. This was the detonation of a digital weapon of mass destruction, an attack that would ultimately vaporize $10 billion from the global economy and bring some of the most powerful corporations on Earth to their knees. It remains the most devastating and costly cyber attack in human history. To understand how the world was pushed to the brink of a digital apocalypse, we must trace the blast wave back to its epicenter, dissecting the anatomy of a shadow war and unraveling the intricate, chilling mechanics of an entity designed to do one thing: dismantle our modern reality.
The origin of this nightmare did not begin with a frontal assault on massive corporate firewalls. It began with a fatal flaw deeply embedded in the psychology of digital security: trust. Every robust security system in the world relies on the concept of a trusted vendor. In Ukraine, virtually every business, government agency, and foreign corporation operating within its borders used a piece of accounting software called MEDOC. It was the Ukrainian equivalent of TurboTax, mandatory for filing taxes. The attackers knew this. They understood that to terrorize a nation, you do not need to break down every individual door. You simply poison the water supply.
In the spring of 2017, a highly sophisticated threat actor infiltrated the servers of Linko's Group, the small family-run business in Kyiv that developed MEDOC. The infiltration was surgical and silent. The hackers compromised the company's update servers, embedding a microscopic backdoor inside a routine, legitimate software update. When millions of computers across Ukraine automatically downloaded this update, their firewalls and antivirus software let it pass without a second glance. The system trusted the signature. This was the first core technique of the invasion, a devastating supply chain compromise. The attackers had successfully planted a Trojan horse inside the walls of countless networks, waiting for the signal to open its belly and release the nightmare within.
When the signal was finally sent, the payload unleashed was a piece of malware the world would quickly name NotPetya. But the delivery mechanism was only the beginning. The true horror of NotPetya lay in its capacity to spread with terrifying autonomy, weaponizing a stolen arsenal that belonged to the National Security Agency of the United States.
A few months prior, a mysterious group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers had leaked a cache of classified NSA cyber weapons onto the internet. Among them was an exploit known as EternalBlue. EternalBlue was a masterpiece of digital lockpicking, targeting a vulnerability in the server message block protocol, specifically SMB version 1. SMB is the invisible language that Windows computers use to talk to each other on a local network, allowing them to share files and printers. EternalBlue exploited a flaw in how this protocol handled specifically crafted packets of data. It was a mathematical sleight of hand that tricked the target computer into executing malicious code at the highest level of system privilege. It bypassed the need for a user to click a bad link or open a poisoned email. If a computer was connected to the network and vulnerable to EternalBlue, it was already compromised. NotPetya utilized EternalBlue to blast through networks like a shockwave, turning every infected machine into a localized launchpad that automatically fired the weapon at every other machine it could see.
But the architects of NotPetya were meticulous. They knew that some forward-thinking network administrators might have actually patched the EternalBlue vulnerability. So they built in a secondary battering ram, a fallback exploit known as Eternal Romance. Also stolen from the NSA, Eternal Romance targeted different, older vulnerabilities in the same SMB protocol, functioning as an escalation of privilege attack. If the front door was bolted shut against EternalBlue, Eternal Romance acted as a crowbar, prying open a side window by manipulating the way the network authenticated user permissions. Between these two stolen government weapons, NotPetya possessed a breaching capability that virtually no civilian network could withstand.
Yet, even these military-grade exploits were not the most devastating tools in NotPetya's arsenal. To truly dismantle a massive corporate infrastructure, you need the master keys. This is where the third core technique comes into play, credential harvesting through a tool called Mimikatz. Once NotPetya established a foothold on a single machine, it deployed a customized version of this notorious open-source program. Mimikatz is designed to perform a deeply invasive procedure, reaching into the temporary memory, the RAM, of the infected computer. When a network administrator logs into a machine to fix a problem, the Windows operating system briefly stores their password in the system memory. Mimikatz hunts for these ghosts in the machine, scraping the RAM to extract these administrative credentials in plain text.
Imagine a bank robber who breaks into the lobby, and instead of attacking the vault directly, they wait in the shadows until the bank manager walks by, silently lifting the master keys right out of their pocket. With these administrative credentials secured, NotPetya no longer needed to hack its way through the rest of the network. It simply logged in. This leads directly into the fourth and fifth pillars of the attack, the techniques that allowed NotPetya to move laterally across global networks at the speed of light. The malware weaponized the network's own administrative tools against it, specifically PS-exec and Windows management instrumentation. These are not hacking tools. These are legitimate, native utilities built into Windows, designed to allow IT staff to remotely manage computers, install software, and run scripts across thousands of machines simultaneously. By stealing the administrative credentials with Mimikatz, NotPetya disguised itself as the ultimate network administrator. It used PSEC and WMI to command every other machine on the network to download and execute the malware. Because these commands were coming from a legitimate administrative account using legitimate network tools, the security systems saw absolutely nothing wrong. This technique, known as living off the land, is what made the spread of NotPetya unstoppable. It was not acting like a virus, it was acting like an all-powerful IT manager, systematically ordering the entire network to commit suicide.
The fatal flaw that allowed this localized Ukrainian infection to become a global catastrophe was a tragic architectural failure shared by nearly every major corporation: flat network design. Despite investing millions in perimeter defenses, companies like Maersk operated on internal networks that were practically borderless. A computer in an accounting office in Odessa, Ukraine, was seamlessly connected to the global domain controllers in Copenhagen, which were connected to terminal servers in New Jersey, Rotterdam, and Mumbai. There was no internal segmentation,
no digital blast doors to contain a breach. Once NotPetya infected a single machine via the EMI-DOC software in a small Ukrainian office, it instantly had an unobstructed superhighway to the entire global infrastructure of the corporation.
The speed of the devastation was incomprehensible. At Maersk, it took less than 7 minutes for the malware to traverse the globe. 4,000 servers and 45,000 individual personal computers were permanently destroyed. The company's entire logistical framework, the incredibly complex matrix that tracks millions of tons of cargo crossing the oceans, was erased. Ships arrived at ports with no digital record of what they were carrying. The entire operation was plunged back into the dark ages, reduced to using WhatsApp on personal smartphones and tracking cargo with pen and paper.
As the smoke cleared and the digital corpses were tallied, the world's leading cybersecurity researchers, the FBI and Interpol, desperately tried to understand who was holding the global economy hostage. At first glance, the attack appeared to be the work of cybercriminals seeking a massive payday. The black screens demanded $300 in Bitcoin to decrypt the hostage data. It provided a single email address, wowsmith123456@postio.net, where victims were supposed to send their payment confirmation to receive their decryption key.
But as forensic analysts reversed engineered the malicious code, the terrifying reality of NotPetya came into sharp focus. The ransomware facade was a lie. The code governing the encryption process had been deliberately butchered by its creators. When NotPetya encrypted the master file table of a hard drive, it threw away the key. There was no way to reverse the process. Even if the attackers wanted to decrypt the data, they physically could not. NotPetya was not ransomware. It was a wiper. It was an assassin disguised as a kidnapper, designed not to extort, but to permanently, irreversibly destroy.
The digital trail that ultimately unmasked the perpetrators hinged on a staggeringly amateur mistake, an almost ironic oversight in an otherwise flawless military operation. By hard-coding a single generic email address hosted on a German provider, Postio, the attackers left themselves vulnerable to basic internet governance. Within hours of the attack spreading, Postio noticed the malicious activity and unilaterally shut down the WowSmith email account.
This single action instantly prevented any victim from contacting the attackers. It broke the illusion of a ransom operation entirely. If you cannot contact the kidnapper, you cannot pay the ransom, and you cannot get your files back. This glaring vulnerability in the attack plan proved beyond a shadow of a doubt to intelligence agencies that financial gain was never the objective. It was pure, unadulterated sabotage.
The forensic evidence, the infrastructure overlaps, and the psychological profile of the attack pointed directly to a single entity. The code shared structural DNA with previous attacks on the Ukrainian power grid, attacks attributed to a notorious hacking syndicate known as Sandworm. And Sandworm was not a gang of rogue teenagers in a basement. Sandworm was Unit 74455 of the Russian Main Intelligence Directorate, the GRU.
The United States and its allies concluded that NotPetya was a state-sponsored cyber weapon unleashed by Russia against Ukraine, timed to coincide with a Ukrainian national holiday. It was an act of digital warfare. But because of the fatal flaw of flat corporate networks, the weapon escaped the battlefield. It spiraled out of control, indiscriminately slaughtering the infrastructure of multinational corporations that were simply collateral damage in a geopolitical conflict they had nothing to do with.
The story of NotPetya is a chilling study in the ultimate power imbalance of the 21st century. A handful of military hackers sitting in a dark room in Moscow, utilizing stolen American code, managed to inflict $10 billion of damage and paralyze global trade in a matter of minutes. No shots were fired,
No borders were physically crossed, yet they managed to ghost right through the defenses of the most powerful corporate empires on Earth.
Maersk alone suffered a loss of $300 million. They only survived the complete eradication of their company because of a single miraculous stroke of luck. During the exact moments NotPetya was wiping their global domain controllers, one single server in a Maersk office in Ghana happened to be offline due to a local power outage. That single disconnected machine contained the only surviving copy of the company's foundational network directory. A team had to physically fly to Africa, retrieve the hard drive, and hand carry it back to Europe to slowly rebuild the corporation from the ashes.
NotPetya forced the world to look into the abyss. It shattered the illusion that digital borders can protect us from the consequences of physical wars. It proved that our hyper-connected reality, the invisible web of data that controls our food, our medicine, and our economy, is incredibly fragile. We have built an unimaginably complex global machine, yet we left the nervous system exposed. The legacy of NotPetya is a lingering, uncomfortable truth. The weapons are already out there, silently waiting in the dark. And the next time the world's screens go black, there may not be a power outage in Ghana to save us.